the proceedings from the roundtable, we formed the view that the things that you might want to think about in order to be confident that you were engaged in good practice in the assessment of student learning using Web 2 forms and formats was a mashup of thinking about the affordances that Web 2 could offer for assessment, thinking about all of the stages in the assessment cycle, and thinking about academic assessment policy. What we have done as a result of mashing up those ideas and all of that input is to produce something which is a set of checklists, 3 checklists, which are being field tested as we speak. There are no right answers. These checklists do not presume to replace other guidelines for good practice in assessment, merely to make them more applicable to some of the more novel aspects of social web technologies. And what we're going to do now is give you a quick tour of what we mean by the assessment affordances of Web 2 stages in the assessment cycle and the academic assessment policies, the things that you might want to think about. And as we did with the quantitative findings from the survey, Jenny's going to give you some of the quotable quotes that we've got from teaching academics that relate to these tools for thinking. In terms of affordances, these are clearly at the top level the kinds of things that social web supports: open publishing, certainly non-traditional academic styles of communication and text, a different take on your identity and your experience and bringing them to bear to your demonstration of learning as a student, the co-creation, collaboration, and crowdsourcing phenomena that the social web support, and ways of thinking about managing content that we have not perhaps previously given a lot of thought to in managing student accessible work. And here's the token slide that shows all of those logos and all of those affordances. And I would just like to make the point that it's very difficult to make distinct definitions of these affordances. They all blur together. One tool may do 3 of the 5 kinds of things for your assessment task. Another may do something rather different that doesn't seem immediately to be covered by our list of affordances. It is certainly a moving picture out there on the web, and our tools for thinking are a moving picture as we have them field tested in subject teaching settings this semester. I'm going to hand now to Jenny to give you some examples of what teaching staff said. And I'm just going to pause for a minute to make sure that anyone who wants to raise their hand picks up on anything that they've thought about so far.
Kathleen, can I leave you to respond to the question of crowdsourcing? So I'll move on now to talk about the different affordances we've identified and some examples from our interviews. Open publishing was something that a lot of the interviewees talked about, and it was a feature of many of the assignments. They talked about the visibility of student work and how this enabled peer review and knowledge sharing, and in some cases it extended the learning community beyond the classroom, beyond students' tutorial groups, or beyond the course. For example, some students were creating and publishing work for a real external audience. One lecturer talked about how she invited external academics to comment on her students' blogs. She said this was quite motivating for the students she had this to say: "It really reaches out their communication beyond the boundaries of the classroom, and that's got enormous value from a motivation perspective. And also it just stops that echo chamber inside the classroom. It's not just my view anymore." Communication styles and texts. We also had a number of people talk about using Web2 tools to encourage students to communicate in a style that might have been a bit different to what they were used to in doing formal assessment. So, for example, enabling students to use perhaps a more informal style and to link to different types of media, and in some cases create different types of media. One of the lecturers said, "The idea is to let them express their thoughts, reflections, interests in the different topics rather than focusing on good grammar and formal sentence structure," which I think tends to constrain a lot of essays. And this was something that came through in a number of people's comments, that perhaps these regular and short contributions to an assignment, for example, doing a weekly blog post, might facilitate different styles of communication that could allow the students to be a bit freer in the way they express themselves. This is a fairly similar to the communicating in different styles. Web2 tools can also be used to encourage students to develop their personal identity and draw on their own experience. One lecturer said that she found students needed encouragement in developing their online identity and their voice when creating and publishing work online. She said there's a process that goes into them finding their different voices, how to share appropriately, how to write with authority. Some will always say, even at the end, "I'm just a student, I've got no point of view." So there are identity issues. Does anyone have any questions about that? And here we've got co-creation, collaboration, and crowdsourcing. And thanks, Kathleen, for defining crowdsourcing, wisdom of the crowds. Clearly, collaboration is one of the key features of a number of the Web2 activities that students might be asked to do. And there are obviously challenges involved in collaboration in all different formats, not just in Web2. But some of our participants talked about some of these challenges as being particular to the Web2 tools. For example, one lecturer was encouraging her students to collaborate on a wiki and to write wiki entries, but they didn't necessarily talk to each other in creating that work, and students found that quite challenging. She said they saw what they had typed in and their lovely wiki page being changed by somebody else. There were some instances where whole sentences or paragraphs were being removed.